Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, cool. My name is Patti Mendoza, Director of Alumni Affairs here with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Really excited to be sharing space with all of you today. Are joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started just in the spirit of staying on. I am really excited that for today's webinar and that it's being led by alum. That's always a plus. Today's webinar really was designed and being offered in response to a lot of the feedback that alums and fellows. I know we also are joined by a handful of fellows today as well, and community members. But this is in response to feedback we've received of wanting to receive continuous educational programming that supports everyone's ongoing personal and professional development. I know that's needed for all of us, including myself. So I'm also here as a participant and really excited for the time we're going to be spending together. So today's webinar is called Positioning Yourself to Succeed. And it's being facilitated by Carla Santamaria, who is the creator and host of the First Gen Coach podcast, a career and lifestyle podcast where first generation professionals learn to rethink limiting cultural beliefs, advance in their careers, and build generational wealth. Carla is an alum of the Spring 2014 Congressional Hispanic Internship Program and currently serves as the CHCI Alumni Association Southern Florida Chapter President. And before I hand the mic over to her, just housekeeping, I encourage you all to engage with us throughout the session in the chat. We want this to be interactive for all of you, for you all to, come and get out what you'd like out of the session, and you do that by engaging with our facilitator. And for those that stay until the end of today's webinar and complete a survey to provide us feedback, because there's always room for growth. We want to know what we're doing right and where there's room. If you complete our feedback, y'all will be entered into a raffle for a gift card. So just keep that in mind. And with that, I pass it off to Carla.
Thank you, Patty. I am so pumped to be here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And if someone can just give me a thumbs up that you can all see the screen, and then we can move on. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you to those of us who are joining us right on time and who are already have your camera on, your screens on. Like Patty said, I want to encourage you all to engage. So, why don't we get started with just, in the chat, if you are comfortable, just say hi and where you're connecting from. Because we are going to spend the next hour together, and I want you to just get ready to position yourself to succeed. So I'll give you a second or two to type it in the chat. If it is safe, I know that with time zones and and stuff, sometimes people say, oh, I'm driving. If you're driving, please, no texting. But otherwise, please engage. And a little bit about me, I was a teacher in a previous life, so I am super comfortable with silence. So if I ask questions and I can just chill here in silence. But I would much prefer for this to be engaging and, to get to know you all as well. So, I'm so excited for you all who join now. If this is, if you're here, you probably want to learn how to pitch yourself authentically. You want to learn how to foster professional relationships that are authentic and meaningful. You want to articulate your unique strengths and skill sets. All right, so let's see. Greetings from Los Angeles. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, there we go. Now we're getting some folks typing in their responses in the chat. Excellent. So if you, looking at your screen, if any of these statements are resonating with you, go ahead and type them in the chat. I would love to know what you're here to learn. I actually did a poll on my Instagram stories yesterday about what folks needed the most support in, whether in, pitching themselves or fostering professional relationships or articulating your strengths. And the third one, articulating your strengths, was far and away, it got 80% of responses. So I am, I'm excited that that's a third one because that means folks won't leave after I go over it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's jump right in. So first, you may notice, like my podcast is called the First Gen Coach Podcast. My name is, Carla, the First Gen Coach. I mean, actually, my name is Carla Santamaria. But I want to talk about what it means to be a first generation professional, because sometimes people think that that means that you're an immigrant. And it has really nothing to do with immigration. It has nothing to do with ethnicity. But really, a first generation professional is the first person in their family to be in a corporate setting or a so-called white collar setting. So hint, if you were a first gen college student, you're probably also a first gen professional right now. So any of you who are first gen professionals, I'd love to know. And if you're not, and if you're a continuing generation professional, let us know too. All right, so a little bit about me. I'm a career and mindset coach. I have a podcaster, a public speaker. I was born in Honduras and I was raised in Miami. I really need to update the slide because every time I look at it, it's like 10 plus years, and I'm like, it's almost 13 now. So, I'm going almost, on 13 years of, mentoring and the coaching and really advocating for students and young professionals and developing them in their careers. One of my proudest, I don't know if it was my proudest moment, but a very cool moment was when I was featured in Univision last summer. I had my family from Honduras texting me, which was really, really cool. I was like, oh, thank you, you're so sweet. My parents screen shared, like they screen recorded me being in Univision, and then they shared it to my family in Honduras, which was just like super adorable. So and I've also been featuring this other places. And the reason that I talk about this is because there are other ways that you can continue to learn and continue to engage, not just with me, but with each other, even after our time today. All right. Before we continue, I just want to give a shout out to CHCI Spring 2014 internship class. These photos are kind of blurry because I screenshot them from my Instagram. But this is me, who was then the CHCI president, Estrella. And then this was Representative Joe Garcia. And I got a shout out on his Twitter. So that was all very cool. So I am eternally grateful for the experience that, the CHCI gave me. Oh God, almost 10 years ago. And, back when I didn't have all these gray hairs. And it was life-changing, as someone who didn't necessarily my parents did a great job of telling me, go to college. I was like, okay, so I went to college, and I thought that the only career opportunities available to me were doctor, lawyer, teacher. And it wasn't until I got to CHCI that we got to to talk to so many, we got so many speakers and guests, and probably webinars such as this one, where I realized, wow, there's more to life. And there's more to careers than being a doctor, lawyer, teacher. So shout out to CHCI, and shout out to all of you who are already taking the first step to position yourself to succeed by being here. All right, wow, we've got folks from all over the country, from Oregon to the Big Apple, New York City, Atlanta. Fantastic. Okay, oops, sorry, I meant to go back. Now, we have a lot to cover today. The first thing that I'm going to go over is the career development cycle, then how you can succeed at each stage. We are going to do a little bit of practicing if we have time, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And then, of course, you all stick around and fill out the survey, because we know that surveys are important. So definitely please stay until the end. Now, career development cycles. Also, I talk very fast. So if at any point you need me to slow down, please tell me, just like wave your hands in the air or something, because I only see a few of you in the camera, or, pause it or use the hand feature. Like I said, interact, not just with me, but with each other, because there is so much power in community. And it's actually one of the things that I'm going to be talking about later on. So back to the career development cycle. The reason that this is a cycle and that it's not steps is because one stage feeds into the other, and it is very much circular. There's the exploring possibility stage, actively applying, and continuous development. And in order to best position yourself to succeed, you really want to understand where you are, because if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going, right? So you need to understand where you are so you can understand where you're going. Now, this is a brief overview of the 3 stages and what you can do. So For example, when you're in the first stage, and remember, it's a circle, so we're going to call them 1, 2, 3 for the purposes of this slide, but you can always, like you can go in any order and each stage works, and goes into the other. So when you're exploring possibilities, your goal is to talk to as many people as possible. This is when you are trying to seek career clarity. This is when you're exploring what else is out there outside of doctor, lawyer, teacher. This is maybe it's like, well, like I'm getting ready to graduate, or I'm finishing my master's program, or I'm finishing my CHCI fellowship. Now what? So pro tip, exploring is a great place to be. All right. So once you're exploring, once you get that clarity, that decision, you go into the actively applying stage. Now, maybe you are, in your first job post-graduation or post-fellowship, and and maybe you're looking for your first job, excuse me. So this is when you're taking steps to be proactive and reaching out to recruiters and hiring managers and researching the companies that you want to apply to. Or maybe you're already in a role and you're kind of looking for your next promotion, or you're looking maybe to transfer to a different team within the company that you're in. This is still the actively applying stage. And then, like once you reach that next milestone, you're in the continuous development. And this is my favorite stage. I am a lifelong learner. So I am always learning new things. Like I have to remind myself that I don't have to take every certification and I don't have to take every free course I find, because I love learning. And what I love about this stage is that it really gives you the opportunity to ground yourself and to be excellent at the job that you are in right now. Because your primary responsibility is always, be excellent at the job you're at, like be excellent at the job that you were hired to do. And you can continue to build those skill sets. And after, like you're getting into a stride and you're building your skill sets, guess what? Then you could be at the next stage of the cycle, which once again is exploring possibilities. So they all feed into each other. I'd love to hear, or I'd love to see in the chat, where you are, whether in the first stage, second stage, third stage, continuous development, because that'll help me kind of gauge where, how to tailor the rest of this conversation. But I promise there is something for everyone. All right. So, if you are comfortable with putting it in the chat, please let us know what stage you are in. All right. Second stage between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, stage 3. Excellent. Yeah. 1 and 2. And remember, there's no, I keep on thinking of the water cycle. There's no like breaking point, like it's flowy, like you can move back and forth. And what exploring possibilities may mean to me, maybe to you, that means actively applying. So, this is a framework that can help you think about your career and can help you think where you are in your goals. Okay, so I see that folks are everywhere in the cycle, which is fantastic. All right, now, no matter what stage you're in, there are some key skills that you must develop so that you can position yourself to succeed. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. The first one is the art of authentically pitching yourself. The second one is how to foster meaningful, deep, authentic professional relationships. And then lastly is owning and articulating your unique strengths. Let's look a little bit deeply, and let's look at these with more detail. So let's start with the first one, authentically pitching yourself. This just means speaking confidently about yourself and your skills. All right. I didn't say sell yourself. I actually really, really hate that term. Like you're not selling yourself. You're not selling anything. You're simply just putting yourself in the best light possible. I mean, before we started recording, I set up my light, so that it's, so that we can be in the best light possible. It is still you. And, like I talk to a lot of people who maybe have, some type of feeling about LinkedIn or about job interviews. And it's like, oh, I have to sell myself at a job interview. Or like, oh, I have to sell myself on LinkedIn. You don't. You are just confidently speaking about yourself and your skill set. All right. And all of that starts with an A+ introduction. So remember the movie The Princess Bride? How many of you have watched it or heard of it? And it's an old movie. So like it was before my time. And I just realized, I wonder if, okay, yeah, so perfect movie, love that movie. Okay, whew. Oh my gosh, I have been using this example for so long that I totally forgot that it's like a super old movie. But we'll see. So this is a scene, like it's a super famous quote. Hi, hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You kill my father, prepare to die. Now, this is kind of grim, not gonna lie. He has like blood coming out from him. But here's the thing, this is truly an A+ introduction. It has a polite greeting, it has his name, it has a relevant personal connection, and it sets the expectations for an interaction. I get so many requests on LinkedIn from like randos. And I'm like, who are you? Or, hey, Carla, I want to connect. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know if we have any mutual connections. And that can create a lot of anxiety. So whenever like, and so we go back to authentically pitching yourself, you really want to make sure that the other person is at ease too, because that way you can be at ease. And it's kind of like when you send an agenda before you start a meeting, people feel more comfortable when they know what to expect. So when you introduce yourself like Inigo Montoya and you give them the expectations of what to expect, yes, as you wish. Thank you, Beth. And you let them know what to expect, then that makes the rest of the conversation easier. Okay, so authentically, I want to pause a little bit there before we move on. Do you have any questions? Does anybody want to come off mute and ask any questions about authentically pitching yourself and what it means to speak confidently about your skills? Okay, if you think of a question, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But we will come back, and I promise that you'll get a chance to practice at the end. Well, towards the end. All right. The second skill is fostering meaningful professional relationships. Now, this can also be named as the do's and don'ts of networking, but I want to quote myself here. If you're only networking when you're looking for jobs, you're doing it wrong. I'm sorry, like I will die on this hill. Like this truly is the wrong way to network. Like if you're only gonna take something away from tonight, take this away. Take a screenshot, share it, tag me on your stories. My handle is, Carla, the first gen coach. This is the most important thing that I want you to remember, because if you're only networking to find a job, then you're not going to be in the headspace to listen and get to know people. If you're only networking to find a job, then you're networking, quote unquote, networking to get things from people. And that isn't what meaningful professional relationships is about. So Eugenia has a question here. So I'd love to see an example of a great intro that has caught your attention on LinkedIn. I have a couple of screenshots. I don't think I included them in this, but I'll come back to this in a minute. I'm going back to networking, right? If you're only networking to find a job, then you might feel icky. You might be tempted to only talk to people who you think can do something for you. You might be tempted to talk to people who, like you want to be like rubbing shoulders with, like rubbing elbows, whatever the saying is. I'm like the worst at idioms. Rubbing elbows with the right people, or like, oh, I'm gonna, that person is a recruiter, or like, oh, that person is a senior director, or that person's a VP. Let me go talk to them. And that is why networking gets such a bad rap. It is, if you're doing that and you feel icky about it, guess what? It's okay to feel icky about it, because that's kind of an icky thing to do. Like you're not really trying to get to know people. You're trying to get something from someone. And that's not what building authentic relationships is about, And I really just want to anchor you in this thought. The majority of human history has relied on people building communities and being in community. Sometimes people tell me, oh, well, I don't want to reach out to them because I don't want to be annoying. Well, if you don't want to be annoying, don't be annoying. Reaching out to someone and saying, hey, it was, like maybe somebody actually, let's think about it here. If you want to drop your LinkedIn so that other people on the chat can reach out to you, great, do that. And you know what? You can say, hey, it was great meeting you at, well, if it was great meeting them, or like, so for example, when I go to virtual events and folks start dropping their LinkedIn, I always share when a message, like like that intro, that LinkedIn intro, going back to that question is, hey, thanks for sharing your link at the so-and-so meetup. Like, let me, hope we can stay in touch. Let me know if you want to, you want to schedule a coffee chat. Because again, A plus introduction, right? LinkedIn already has your name, so you don't need to retype it if you don't want to. And it has the polite greeting, and it establishes a personal connection. This is how we met. And it also has the expectations for the relationship. So that's kind of how you get started, right? Just like very, very basic. Just think of Inigo Montoya, set the expectations for the relationship. I get requests all the time. Ever since I made my profile public, I get random messages all the time like, hey, Carla, I love talking to people in your industry. And I'm like, dude, you copy pasted this. I'm not like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want from me. So no, ignore. So the LinkedIn connections that I usually accept are the ones that follow that format or that just tell me how we know each other or why you want to connect. It's okay if you want to connect just because you think someone has a cool thing to say. But by the way, networking isn't just adding people on LinkedIn. That isn't what I'm talking about. And this is why this is not called, like networking 101 or LinkedIn 101. No. I mean, I do have a training on LinkedIn, so feel free to download it and actually can send it out after our time together today. But this is about building meaningful relationships. And remember, we are social beings. We are community beings. We are not meant to succeed alone. We are not meant to go through life alone. The saying, it takes a village, it really does. And fostering meaningful relationships is how you make your village. All right. So this starts with being yourself. So here's a few things to keep in mind. You only have to network with people that you like. I always start there. Think about, for example, last time that you were in line at like Starbucks or at Target or at the grocery store, or at a concert, and let's think of a concert or like the movie or someplace that you were really excited to be. So maybe like a concert, maybe a museum, maybe a book signing, whatever it may be. And think about like being in line with someone and you're waiting in line. And then you start talking to people in line and, like and it's like, oh, it's nice. You're vibing with them. You start talking, great. Or sometimes you're in line and the people that you're talking to are not nice. And like, oh, okay, I don't want to talk to you. Let me go be on my phone. It's just, it starts with being yourself. You only have to network with people you like. The reason that I show this example is that I want to remind you that you already know how to talk to humans. Sometimes we think like, oh, I need to put on like my networking hat or I need to put on my workplace hat. And we forget to be humans. We are at our core, we are humans trying to connect with other humans, and connecting with things in common. So I just want to remind you of that. All right. So you only have to network with people you like, with people that you vibe with. The second thing that I want to remind you is that there are already people in your life who are rooting for your success. Okay. Like I said before, we are not meant to succeed alone, and we have not succeeded alone. I don't believe in the self-made myth. I believe in being community made. All right. How did you find out about this webinar? Who shared it with you? Who invited with you? How did you find out about CHCI? How did you get your current job? Who has been a mentor in your life? Who has said something one time that was really meaningful and that stuck with you and that you took with you? All of those people are rooting for your success. Okay, so, and fostering relationships is about keeping in touch with those people and letting them know how impactful their words or their time has been. Okay, it's letting them know how impactful, like just the kindness that they did has been. And so I want to pause here and invite you to reflect. Who in your life has shared a key piece of valuable career advice? I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen for a second. So I don't want you to be distracted by reading. And I just want to invite you to think about that. Who in your life has shared an important piece of career advice? And so think about it for a second, and I would love to hear from one or two voices.
Carla, do you mind if I go first, or you want to give people a little bit more time?
Oh, I think I think we're ready to go. And also, Patty, can you confirm that folks have the ability to unmute themselves? Because I just realized I didn't ask.
I think it worked, right? Could you hear me?
Yes, I heard you. Okay. All
Awesome.
right, perfect. Okay, so Natalia, if you can just give us 1 second. Somebody asked the question, so I'm going to say the question again. Who in your life has given you a piece of valuable career advice, and what was it? Okay, and then Natalia, if you are ready to share, please do.
Awesome. And sorry, my video is off. I am in the middle of nowhere in Arkansas, so that's why my video is off. But so look, this was a bit of a difficult pill for me to swallow, but my previous boss at Uber, I spent about 3 years in technology, and she told me I was making too little. She just went out there, like, she told me, you're making too little for the MBA you pursued and for just the range of experience that you have. And that really opened up my eyes to really raise the bar from a compensation standpoint, and go out there to honestly fish for a more profitable opportunity for me.
That is really beautiful. One time I asked for a raise and my boss laughed. So I'm so glad that you had a significant, like, she literally laughed. And I was like, all right, well, time to look for a new job. Maybe she was nervous, trying to be empathetic and trauma informed, and maybe she just had a bad experience. But Natalia, that is such a beautiful, beautiful story. So I want to ask you something, and you don't have to answer it. Actually, before I ask that story, I'm going to invite someone else to share, and then I'll ask the same question to both of you. So anybody else would like to share?
I'll go.
Okay.
This came from a mentor of mine, and the direct thing that I got from her was a resource, but it had a broader implication of general advice. And it was she very specifically shared a podcast with me, and I initially went to her with asking for career advice, and specifically in the tech industry and everything, and it came out of left field when she came back to me and said, take a look at this podcast. And the podcast has nothing to do with career or tech or anything. And it's just about overcoming personal boundaries. And this one was specifically through the lens of feminist issues and whatnot. And the general broad implication that she was kind of trying to tell me is that there's a lot of personal limiting beliefs and obstacles that, again, have nothing to do with your career, but will have huge effects on your career that you should focus on and work on, that will actually help you progress wherever you're going.
Thank you. That is really, yeah. I mean, as a career coach, one of the main things that I work with is folks setting boundaries around their career, because I believe that work is like a gas. It will expand and fill up all available space. But if you set boundaries, it will just stay in those boundaries, so you can confine it. Okay, so I'm going to ask one more time if somebody else would like to share. And if not, I'm going to ask the next question. Okay, now you don't have to share. You don't have to, I'm not putting either one of you on the spot, or any of you who are on the call and already thinking about a really great piece of career advice that you've gotten. But my next question is this: have you gone back and said thank you to that person? Have you gone back and said, hey, that one piece of advice you gave me, that one book you recommended, that podcast you recommended, that one time we talked about, what I should be making in your career, it really opened my eyes, it was really impactful. Have you gone back and said, thank you? And if you haven't, I definitely invite you to, because that is what, that is how humans talk to one another, right? And sometimes it can be, I know that I felt very awkward about something that someone said, and I'm like, oh my gosh, is it weird that I remember that? So I'm like, I don't want to be embarrassing. But I also think, well, feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a gift and not giving it. So why would you wrap this beautiful gift and then not give it to them? And the reason that I talk about going back is because I want to remind you, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. I want to remind you that there are people in your life who are rooting for your success. Okay, they are rooting for your, oh, sorry. They're rooting for your success. And so we have How Women Rise, yeah, another book on, but a recommendation on the chat. Thank you, Eugenia. So remember that when you're thinking about fostering meaningful relationships, it's not only about meeting new people, it's also about looking at the people already in your life and checking in on them and saying, hey, you were my internship boss 10 years ago. And you, I mean, actually, here's the example that I'm thinking of. This woman was my boss when in my internship, over 10 years ago. And she was the first person who introduced me to the concept of asset-based community development. And now that I say that out loud, I'm like, I'm all about strengths-based and leaning into our strengths and leveraging our strengths, which is actually what takes me to my next thing. But that concept, it came from this woman. I reached out to her so many times to tell her thank you, and have kept in touch, because it is really important to remember that there are people in our lives who are who are already rooting for us. Okay, so we have a question in the chat. How does a person make that mindset shift from being of service, helping others, to being vulnerable and asking for help? Asking for help is a strength. I say that all the time because it really, really is, especially as women. We have been socialized to be so self-serving and sacrificial and put others first, and and we glorify like the superwoman and like how women can have it all. Have you ever heard any movie, marketing, commercial, anything about how men can have it all? Like, have you ever entertained any discussion on like, can men really have it all? Like, why are we as women putting this question on ourselves? I know that this is, a gender inclusive chat, but I definitely wanted to address that question. It's okay to ask for help. Asking for help is a strength. And remember, the majority of human history has been communities building up one another, all right? People filling in each other's gaps. Okay, all right. So third thing, so relationships go both ways. So that's the third one. Just like you ask for help, it's okay to be, to be of service. And it's okay to have that be, go both ways. And again, I go back to like the questions I had about who gave you a really important piece of career advice, because it's not just their job to like always be giving you career advice and then you take it and run and never say, thank you, or never circle back and say, hey, by the way, that gave me the confidence to do X, Y, or Z. Like, relationships go both ways. Reach out to that mentor, or reach out to that person that you would like to mentor. Or maybe there's someone, it doesn't matter. Maybe someone is more senior than you, and said, hey, do you have time for a coffee chat? Or maybe someone is more junior than you and you're like, oh, I kind of, I see myself in you, or whatever it is. Relationships go both ways. Okay, so fostering meaningful relationships isn't just about constantly meeting new people and increasing your LinkedIn connections and having every coffee chat every single day. And it's like, oh, I've got to 500 connections. No, but it is about humans connecting with other humans. And so I want to bring us back. All right. So in order to succeed in your career, to position yourself for career success, you must learn to pitch yourself authentically. You must learn to develop and foster professional relationships. And now the last one, owning and articulating your unique strengths. So what do I mean by this? Let me ask you some questions. What are your strengths? What are you excellent at? What sets you apart? So if you would like to type those things in the chat, sure. If you would like to come off mute and share them, sure. But if you're kind of like feeling uncomfortable right now, or saying like, oh snap, what are my strengths? What am I excellent? I don't think anything sets me apart. Then just sit with that discomfort for a minute. Okay. And I want you to ask yourself, what is uniquely valuable about you? Now, many people of Latino origin and people of the global majority struggle with articulating our unique strengths, because there has been an overemphasis on humility that was passed down through colonialism. It was also passed down through Christianity, like this, like humility and Marianismo, and again, going back to like self-sacrificial. And not necessarily like not tooting our own horn. You may be tempted to downplay your role in a major project. Sometimes this is a mistake that people make in job interviews all the time. And it comes from this desire to come across as humble. When somebody says like, oh, tell me about a time that, you know, you accomplished something major. And then you start saying, we, well, our team did this and our team did that. And I'm like, they don't care about your team. They asked about you. And so you may be tempted to, to downplay your role or to avoid talking about your accomplishments. It's why I know that some of you on this call may have felt uncomfortable when I ask you what your strengths are, or when I ask you what is unique about you. Or another thing that you may be tempted to do is to deflect or reject compliments. Like, I don't know if you've done this yourself, you've seen other people like, oh, you know, like Nancy did an excellent job. Oh no, it was a team effort. It's like, okay, but Nancy still did an excellent job. So here's something that you can try if it feels, you know, like, oh, like some people are like, oh my gosh, I hate it when people compliment me. And again, there's like a cultural component of this. It's not just, you know, like people who are Latino, but it's like, you know, a lot of people from the global majority, people of Asian cultures, like, it's like, oh my gosh, don't look at me. Like it's making me panic. It's making me sweat. What if when someone compliments you, you just say, thank you for noticing, or thank you for the feedback. That's it. You know, like you can just accept the compliment gracefully and move right along, you know, and it may feel uncomfortable at first. But remember, it's not just brag. I mean, it's not bragging. It's just the facts. I was at a training a few weeks ago. I was part of like the Latinas in Tech, and they were talking about how to showcase your strengths. And I was like, oh, I love this. And she said this, remember, it's not bragging, it's just the facts. And so read your own resume. Read, you know, take an inventory. And actually, I think that's my next step, right? Yeah. How to own and articulate your strengths. Take an inventory of your skills. And now this is going to require you to dig deep. This is going to require you to write down all the projects you've completed, you know, like personally, professionally, in your community. What I see all the time is that people will say like, oh, you know, like, I don't think I've ever really completed anything that special. And then they'll tell me about the time they organized a protest for 35,000 people. Like literally, just like, what? You know, what do you mean it's not that special? 35,000 people is a lot, and anything that you did that impact that, especially if you led this protest. Or, you know, it's like, oh, it's not really that big of a deal. And then they put like this art exhibition, or like they had this, anyway, like I have heard all sorts of amazing accomplishments, you know, that have been preceded by, oh, it's not that big of a deal, but that one time I did X, Y, or Z. So please remember to own your strengths, all right? So write them all down and start seeing what patterns are emerging. What are the things that you constantly see yourself drawn to? You know, I actually became a career coach because everybody kept coming to me for career coaching. Now my background's in higher ed, so I just thought that everybody in higher ed did career coaching. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm not technically an advisor, but I always advise students. You know, I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm not an advisor, but I, you know, like, I really thought that's just what everyone did. And you see what I mean about how we can downplay our own accomplishments? Like I was doing it myself. Like there was alumni that had graduated and that came back to me years later. Hey, you know, like now I'm trying to go to grad school, or like, hey, I'm trying to go to dental school, or now I'm thinking of like, you know, making this kind of pivot or X, Y, or Z. And I really, really thought that was just what everyone did. You know, it's like, well, that's part of the job, right? No, it's definitely going above and beyond. And that's one of the, and again, when I did this, I saw the pattern. And this is, you know, and I was like, well, it's not just something I'm great at, it's something that brings me joy. So dig deep, take an inventory of your skills. Now enlist the help of your village. All right, remember, asking for help is a strength. So enlist the help of your village, enlist the help of the people who are already in your life who are rooting for you, enlist the help of your manager. Be like, hey manager, you know, like, you know, at your next one-on-one, like, so I was just wondering if you could say maybe what would you say are my greatest strengths, or what are, you know, like what are some of the assets that I bring to the team? And if that's not the kind of relationship you have with your manager, get a different manager, or ask somebody else in the meantime. Like, who are the safe people in your life that you can ask? Maybe it's not your direct manager. My like 2 jobs ago, my manager was not the greatest. I was like, oh, that was the first time in my life that I had a manager that wasn't that was kind of difficult, and it was a new experience, in like my career development. It's like, how do I manage up? So that man was definitely something else. But thankfully, I'd had a lot of previous managers who had given me the feedback on, Carla, you're really good at taking initiative, or like, you're really great at this, and like, you're really great at that. So then I was like, oh, okay. And then I asked other people, or maybe even after working together. So maybe even after working together in a cross collaborative project, it's like, hey, so, what could I have done better? Or what are some of my strengths or areas of opportunities? Really asking your village to help you is important. Remember, we're not meant to, succeed on our own. And a lot of times it's easier for others to see our strengths than it is for us to see our strengths. And then, of course, practice. I remember when I was at a job, no, it wasn't a job interview. I was at the Career Center for the University of Miami, and I was doing a mock interview. And then, the career advisor asked me, so Carla, what are your strengths? And I actually said these words. I said, well, I don't really like talking about my strengths because humility is one of my core values. And she was like, stop right there. Stop right there. And I was like, why? It's true. What obviously, like, showing up as myself is another one of my values. And she was like, Carla, you need to be able to talk about your strengths. And that was kind of the first time that I realized, am I uncomfortable talking about my strengths? And I was, clearly. And like we talked about before, like I grew up in an extremely conservative Christian household that very much values strength. So there's like the cultural component in terms of like ethnicity, and then there's like the religious component and that culture. And so I understand how it can feel hard to talk about your strengths, but it's not bragging. It is just the truth. It is just a clear articulation of the facts. All right. So here is one of the things that you can practice, And so, hi, my name is, I cannot believe that the thought that came to my head is Slim Shady. But anyway, so maybe I'll change that to hello, and so that you don't have Slim Shady playing in your head. But so I could say, hi, everyone. My name is Carla Santamaria. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a career and mindset coach. I am a podcaster, a public speaker. And my biggest strengths include reflection. My biggest strengths include helping people see their own strengths. Like, that is actually my superpower. It's my favorite thing about career coaching. It's my favorite thing about podcasting. It's my favorite thing about interacting with folks, is that with just a few questions, they start to see their own strengths. And I would have never found this out if I didn't take an inventory of my skills. All right. So I invite you to take an inventory of your skills. Okay. And so I do want to just kind of add this caveat, or like this disclaimer, that owning your strengths is not always about pitching yourself to other people, because I know that we talked about pitching yourself in the beginning, but owning your strengths is about showing up for yourself. Owning your strengths is knowing that you can walk into a job interview, completely bomb it, and your worth will not be diminished. Owning your strengths is knowing that if other people don't see your strengths, it's their loss, right? So it's not about what you can produce. And I go back to, like, it's not about selling yourself. You're not selling anything. You're not selling your integrity. You are positioning yourself in the best light. But when you own your strengths, and when you can look in the mirror and say, yeah, like, I am fierce, or yeah, I'm a really great, project manager, or I'm really good at synthesizing complex ideas into easy, like digestible information, or I'm really great at engaging presentations, or I'm really good at helping people feel comfortable. Whatever you may be, those are your strengths, and stepping into them is what is going to help you succeed in your career. So to summarize, there are 3 skills that will help you position yourself to succeed regardless of where you are in the career development journey. That is pitching yourself, developing and fostering meaningful professional relationships, and owning your unique strengths. All right. I want to close with this quote from Vincent Lombardi. He said, "The only place success comes before work is in the dictionary." I did a little bit of research on this guy because I always like to research people I don't know to make sure they're not like a Nazi or something, and I'm accidentally putting them in my quotes. So this guy was like apparently like he took the Packers from like this like bottom rated NFL team to like an amazing team, and it really transformed the franchise. And he is like an icon of determination to succeed. So like, okay, guy, Vincent Lombardi, way to go. So before we wrap up, and remember, I want to invite you to work with me, or not invite you to work with me. I mean, if you want to just reach me out, but I just want to let you know that you can work with me. You can do career coaching. I'm also open for keynotes or workshop facilitations for your org, such as this one. And let's connect. Let's keep in touch. I mostly hang out on Instagram. You can also email me at Carla the First Gen Coach. You can follow me on LinkedIn. Actually, yeah, and remember, if you add me on LinkedIn, please tell me how we know each other, because I get very uncomfortable when I don't like, I receive so many random notifications and like requests that I just like, are you trying to sell me something? Are you trying to anyway? So yeah, always, and that's just like a pro tip for LinkedIn, always send a personalized request. All right. So thank you so much. And we are not done yet. So do not sign off. Let's hang out for a few more minutes so we can do Q&A and so that we can answer the survey. So I'm going to stop sharing and open the floor up for questions. I saw we had, let me see, I think we had a question in the past, a specific situation related to your current work. I'm open to questions. If you have questions, definitely now is the time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll jump in here. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your presentation. That was really well sort of clear and really digestible. So I do appreciate that. The question came from, this is kind of more personal to me. So I'm a recent college grad. I graduated last year. And I kind of started working full time, like post grad, which is a huge blessing. And, kind of just like you said, building up that sort of first generation professional identity, kind of shifting from that student sort of identity. And some things I've noticed, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, was like kind of managing like different managers that you work with. So like I've always kind of had like a strong support team and kind of like in undergrad involvements, kind of like having, managers that I can work with and collaborate with. However, the position I'm in now, it's like more kind of like faculty facing, and they're very busy. So I kind of find myself more kind of having to like trailblaze and not really have that sort of support in a manager that you would kind of maybe hope for. So I'm just curious how, like, you kind of shared a little bit that you've kind of navigated some of those things. Just kind of curious if you have any advice or input on like how to better navigate that.
So is the question how to... Oh, sorry.
Or just even like your general, like just even your general like own lived experiences, like kind of like speaking more to like the different type of managers that you might end up coming across from like, maybe one who like kind of gives you more of that freedom versus someone who's like kind of like working more collaboratively with you. Just kind of like curious to hear your input there.
Yeah, of course. Does anybody else hear the echo? Okay. So, okay, thank you. All right. So absolutely. When managing your manager is not the best place to be, but it's a great skill to learn. So let's put it that way, like make lemonade out of lemons, right? Whenever you're working with a manager, whenever you start a new job, I highly encourage you to ask them what their preferred communication style is. I remember I had a manager who would send me emails for like everything, and to me, that's not the most effective way to communicate. But I asked her, do you prefer for me to reply to you at the end of the day with all the updates? Or do you prefer for me to reply to every single individual email? And she said, oh, every individual email, please. That way I can check it off my list. So I had that conversation very early on. Like, I think it was my first week on the job. And I knew that is her communication style. So a lot of the times that maybe, I don't want to call it like discomfort or that sort of like mismatch. That's just what it comes down to. It's like a mismatch in communication style or a mismatch in leadership style. Now, I also want to, like, especially in higher ed, it kind of tends to be like a very stoic and slow moving institution. A lot of people have been kind of just promoted without any professional development to support their growth as managers. Like, manager development is like my absolute favorite thing to talk about, because managers affect so much in your day-to-day life and outside of my, your day-to-day life. So I try to remember that not all managers have had that support and that professional development. So, just coming from a place of empathy and come from a place of curiosity and understanding. So whatever issue you may be having, like, just ask yourself, could this be a miscommunication? Like, could this be just like a style issue? Like, I was able to figure out that thing with that manager super quickly. I was like, all right, like, so-and-so just prefers an email response to everything. Great. Or, like, and again, that's just an example of communication. Let's see, in terms of, okay, you should also be having regular check-ins with your managers. And again, not all managers know to do this, because not all organizations invest in developing their managers. So maybe like, this may be an opportunity for you to figure out what it is that you need. Because maybe what you need is like, hey, I need a little bit more structure, or actually what I need is a little bit more flexibility, kind of asking those questions, like, but really doing the inner reflection first and asking what you need. Because if you don't know what you need, and how are you going to go to your manager and be like, I don't like your managing style? Like, try to come from a solutions oriented approach. And by the way, like, if you are job hunting, one of my favorite questions that you can ask at the end of the interview is, can you give me an example of a time when you managed someone who had a different learning style than yours? Or a fun one, can you give me an example of a time when you give feedback to someone who was underperforming? Because it has to be specific. If you ask someone, oh, like, what's your management style? They're going to, two things. They're either going to lie and say they're great, or they may not be self-aware enough to know that they're not good. No one's going to say, oh, I'm a micromanager with a short temper. Like, no one's going to say that, But if you ask them to give an example, then that's how you learn their management style. Now, like, you're already in the job, just ask yourself, do that reflection what you need? And then kind of, like, approach it from a place of empathy and curiosity. And then, bring this solution to your manager, like, hey, can we start having bi-weekly check-ins, or that kind of thing. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions?
There was a question in the chat earlier about shifting mindset from being in service to others and helping others to then being vulnerable and asking for help.
Okay.
Any
Yeah. Yes. So, I go back to, like, remembering that this hyper individualistic, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it is a myth. Like, that saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it's actually a myth. And it was not a myth, but it was an idiom that was designed or coined, to mean something that was totally ridiculous, like, to mean something that was totally impossible. So then how it morphed into this thing that we're supposed to do is, I don't know, one of the greatest, like, what is, like, magic tricks, what do you call it, like, con jobs that has been happening to us as people who are in just living in society and feeling isolated. There's actually I saw a stat, and I'm gonna try to find it, because I fiercely believe in double checking your sources, so I apologize for not having a source. But it's something like 20% of adults don't have at least one close friend. Like, there is a loneliness epidemic. And so, just, if you're feeling lonely and you're feeling like you can't ask for help, or you're feeling like you can't reach out to people, think about 5 people in your life that you care about, and then ask yourself, wow, is it likely that one of them is also feeling this way? So, like, just remember that it's okay to help others from a place of joy, from a place that fills you, that fills your cup. And please do that. But when bleeds over into a place of like it is just draining you, then that's not serving anyone. So like it's shifting your mindset that what is best for you is best for everyone. All right. I know we have 4 minutes left, and I don't know if we have time for any more questions, or Patty, if you want to take it away. I know that you asked folks to fill out the survey. I don't know if this is something that you wanted to do right now, or are there any other items that you wanted us to cover?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much, Carla, for spending your time, giving of your time and your talent with us today and sharing nuggets of wisdom. I know I'm walking away, I'm having learned new things, and also provided me an opportunity to kind of reevaluate and think about, you shared examples of like even the outreach, right? Like through LinkedIn, and how you speak about yourself and your talent. So a lot of really great information shared. So thank you again so much for that. I'm reading the chat. I'm horrible at multitasking. I added in the chat the webinar link. Webinar survey link, y'all. Okay, the webinar survey link is in the chat. So please click on that. I will also send it via email, and if I know Carla already shared her contact info, so I'll make sure that I also include the survey link and Carla's contact information so you can reach out to her directly, and any other resources, Carla, you'd like me to share with folks who joined us today. I don't have any other questions. I don't know if there's one last burning question from folks in the group, or Carla, if there's any last words you want to share with us.
Yeah, well, thank you all again. I just want to remind you that, the title of this webinar is positioning yourself to succeed. And just by being here, by investing your time, by being open to learning new things, that is an important aspect. Like success doesn't magically fall from the sky. It's why I chose that quote. The only place that success comes for work is in the dictionary, because and it's okay to work, and it's okay to want to reach your goals, and to do it from a place of joy, to do it from a place of owning your strengths, to know that you are enough and that you are an asset to any organization. So I guess my closing words will be, if you got something away from this, please just let me know. You can reach me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, the LinkedIn connection request again. Please let me know who you are. It's very important if I get random requests. But also connect with each other. Lean into the people in your life who are already rooting for your success, So thank you all so much for spending this time here with me. And again, huge shout out to CHCI. I love CHCI so much. So being here as a speaker after having been an intern is such a beautiful full circle moment. So thank you for inviting me, Patty.
Thank you for being with us, Carla. And again, thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening.
Okay. Bye, everyone.